last week was sort of my rock bottom, where I had been eating sugar, and it was just really messing up my creativity. I didn't feel like writing social media posts, and I didn't feel like engaging, with my community, and it was just really sapped my creativity. In fact, and what I finally did though this week is that I took myself in hand, and I did about a day and a half worth of fasting, just to kind of clear out some of the crap, shall we say, that I've been eating. And I'm feeling like myself again. Namaste. Got a question for you today. What if the reason your business feels harder than it should has nothing to do with strategy? And what if your body has been trying to tell you something, but your mind, just keeps brushing it aside? Well, today we are going to be talking about the mind-body business connection and why your physical health may be affecting your focus, your confidence, your energy level, and success more than you realize. So here's the deal. First off, I want to welcome you to Design Your Life Your Way. I am Gloria Grace. And if you're like me, if you're a woman over 50, you probably are carrying a lot. Excuse me one second. Sorry about that. I had a cough. Didn't want to have that on camera or, on the audio. Anyway, as I said, if you're like me, many women over 50 are carrying a lot, especially if you're a business owner as well. You're juggling all of the demands of business, and then if you're a parent or a spouse or a caregiver, or you've got pets, whatever it is, you've got a lot of responsibilities. And oftentimes we've been trained to put others first instead of focusing on our own needs. And sometimes we might tend to separate health from business, even though they really are deeply connected. Because let's face it, if success is built on depletion, your energy, your physical health, whatever, your emotional depletion, all of that, that's not true success. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not true success. So here's the deal. See, you can have a beautiful mission, and you can have a powerful message. But if your body is exhausted or inflamed, or you're not getting the right nourishment, or you're constantly stressed out, it just becomes so much harder to show up consistently and joyfully. And especially if you are a business owner, I'm sure that most likely you started this business because you had something to give. And especially if maybe you had a 9-to-5 job, and now you pivoted and you decided to have a business, I'm sure it's because you felt that this was a way for you to really express yourself and express joy. But when your health isn't there, it really becomes hard to do that. And I know for me, I've had this happen a couple times. Once was that I can really remember where it really, really affected me was after my sister had passed. I started having major back issues. And I've dealt with back problems since I was a teenager, and so every once in a while, it's like my back would go out, and I would have to go to a chiropractor and get myself back in alignment. Well, this time I went to a chiropractor, but it still wasn't doing any good. And even though this was my regular, person, it just wasn't working. And then I finally sought out help from another, a different type of, I'm trying to remember what was her title. It was some sort of specialist, really dealing with things. And she helped me finally to start getting some relief. And while I was going through this, it was really hard to show up in my business, because when you're in pain, it's tough. And sometimes it's also not just pain that can mess us up. Sometimes it's how we're feeding ourselves. And I confess that over the last few months now, really since November, I would say, of last year, I've been sort of experimenting with indulging a little bit in foods that maybe aren't the healthiest for me. And then I would kind of say, okay, now I got to go back to eating better again. But I wound up adding some weight back onto my body, of all the lovely weight that I had taken off. And I've just been bouncing around. And last week was sort of my rock bottom, where I had been eating sugar. And it was just really messing up my creativity. I didn't feel like writing social media posts, and I didn't feel like engaging in, with my community. And it was just really sapped my creativity. In fact, frankly, I could have, would have preferred to have recorded this podcast last week, in fact, but I just wasn't up for it, because I had the theme, this topic picked out last week, but I just wasn't ready to do it. And now I need to get it done this week because it's due. So it's like, and what I finally did though this week is that I took myself in hand, and I did about a day and a half worth of fasting, just to kind of clear out some of the crap, shall we say, that I've been eating. And now that since I broke the fast, I've been eating healthy foods again, and I'm feeling like myself again. And so I'm able to get this podcast episode recorded today because of that. In fact, I did a lot of prep work for it, and coming up with a couple new things I'm going to be throwing in here today that I think is going to make the podcast even better going forward. So let's dive in a little deeper here, and why it's so important to pay attention to how you're feeling emotionally, physically, mentally, in order to have your business be as successful as you'd like it to be. So, for one thing, your energy level really affects execution. And like I said, my energy level was like in the toilet, shall we say, recently. So, if you're tired, if you're depleted, if you're overstimulated, if you're physically uncomfortable, or if you've been consuming too much sugar, like I was, then your decision making suffers, your follow through suffers, your visibility feels heavier, like I said. I wasn't engaging as much as I should have, and creativity drops. And then what can happen also is that then your physical stress can also affect your emotional resilience. And I don't know if you've ever felt this, when your nervous system gets overloaded. suddenly everything feels more urgent. Rejection feels a lot more personal too. Boundaries are harder to set up, and your confidence gets shaky. And if you are having issues with boundaries, there was a previous episode I talked about this recently, so if you need some tips on how to set up boundaries for yourself. But it's definitely harder to set up boundaries when you're not feeling good. And health habits shape self-trust. And when we're talking about health, I'm going to have a drink of water because I keep wanting to cough for some strange reason. So every time you honor your body, you're reinforcing your worthiness. You strengthen self-leadership, and you become more available for that aligned action. So the goal here is not to become, you don't want to become more productive at the expense of your well-being. The goal is really to become more aligned. And this is my whole thing. This is what I preach, is really the importance of this, because when you are aligned with your purpose, when your body, your mind, your emotions are all running great, that's when you can get into the flow. And that's what then allows you to grow your business more effectively. So I put together a couple little mistakes here. Not little mistakes, they are mistakes. So I'm just got my notes here. I want to make sure I can read them a little bit. So here's what women over 50 often get wrong. Not every woman over 50, but there are many, and even me. Like I said, sometimes I do this too. So so learn from me. Learn from my mistakes. So if you want to get a piece of paper maybe and take some notes, you can come back and listen to this again. But yeah, pay attention to this, okay? So mistake number 1 is treating health as optional until things get bad. No. Please don't do this. Because you know what? Your body will whisper before it screams. It really will. Because I know for me, it's like sometimes I'll get like these little, before my back goes out, it's like I might get this little twinge and go, And when that happens, what I recommend, when you do have like a little, maybe something feels a little off, is get curious and say, body, what are you trying to tell me? and really get still and see if you can figure it out. See if you can say, okay, what's going on? What's going on with me? And we'll get more into that in a little bit. So stick around. So that's mistake number 1. So number 2 is thinking that burnout is a time management issue only. Because actually, there's a lot more things that can go into causing burnout. Often, it could be just poor sleep. Maybe you're, burning the midnight oil, as they say, and you're staying up too late. Maybe you're, spending too much time on social media right before you go to bed. Or, we're doing too much screen time before you go to bed. That doesn't help. You've got maybe some unresolved stress over maybe something that's going on either in your business or maybe in your personal life. You're not eating consistently well. As I mentioned, I've been going, kind of back and forth. I'd eat well for a few days, and then maybe on the weekends I would indulge. And so, being consistent is what really matters. Grief, grief really can, grief can lead to burnout when you ignore it. if you are pushing through, maybe you've gone through a relationship change. Either you've gotten divorced or separated, or your spouse has passed, but you've got to keep the business going, and so you keep going, and you're not allowing yourself time to grieve that loss. Then eventually your body is going to tell you, hey, you need to stop, because you need to give yourself that gift to grieve. Sometimes it can be caused by inflammation, lack of movement, and if you're just sitting at your desk all day and you're not getting out, getting any exercise, that's a recipe for disaster. And it doesn't have to be, going to the gym for 30 minutes either. It could be something as simple as just going for a walk. And then also, burnout can be caused by overgiving. That's where those boundaries come in again. When you are serving from an empty cup, eventually, or if you're serving from as your cup keeps depleting, eventually it's going to be empty. That's what I really want to say. And that, if you keep doing for others, doing for the family, doing for your clients, and not taking any time for yourself, then yeah, you're gonna burn out, and then your health can suffer. So, which leads me to mistake number 3, which is very close to number 2, is that believing that pushing harder is the answer, because really, it's not. And I'm just thinking, I've got a good friend of mine who is also a business coach. Her name is Vicki Iba. Check her out. I know she's on LinkedIn. She says these lovely Tuesday, Teach Me Tuesday videos. And I know she has talked about this before, about sometimes doing less actually allows you to do more. And I think I've said this on the podcast too. But it really is amazing when you can lighten up your schedule. It creates room to breathe. It's so much nicer when you can just take that break, when you can maybe cut a few things out of your schedule instead. And because it really does, it just gives your brain space to come up with ideas. It really does. It's so much better. So I want you to think about this, that so many women have really learned to disconnect from their bodies to survive. But thriving, both in life and in business, really asks for reconnection. So I want to invite you to look at this from the love lens. Now, for those of you who may be new to Design Your Life, to the podcast, or don't know about me, LOVE is an acronym. And so it's something I'll call the love method, something I wrote about in my book. And the L in love stands for let go and let God. So what I invite you to do is to think about, what beliefs do you have right now that you need to release around this idea of productivity and self-worth, or even pushing through. So, maybe you have a belief that maybe even isn't yours. Sometimes these are beliefs that we've picked up in childhood. Like rest is lazy. Or more than even that, is that you need to work hard for your money, right? Yeah, you need to work hard for your money. Well, maybe not. Maybe you need to work smarter for the money instead. Maybe it's looking at reframing something around, I have to earn the right to slow down. Because again, we live in this hustle culture of ours that feels that, you've got to compete, and you've got to just go, go, go all the time. So maybe think about really taking a look at that and asking yourself, is that really what I want to believe? Maybe yes, maybe no. Now, the O in love stands for open your heart to receive. So this could be where you spend some time asking yourself, how can I receive support? How can I ask for and then open myself up to rest or to receive better nourishment? And maybe it means getting buy-in from the people that you live with, perhaps. Again, going back to those boundaries, check out that episode. I'll have the link to that in the show notes. I think that'll be helpful for you, I'm sure. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. Because when you can set boundaries, that is a really good way to be able to help you to get that support and the rest and nourishment that you need. And the V, this is one of my favorites, is value your uniqueness. So this really is about learning to honor your body's own rhythms. Because there are some people, for example, there's some people who like to get up early in the morning and do their most creative work or maybe the things that they need to get done then. And then there are people who are night owls and they like to stay up late and do stuff. So figure out, who are you? Who are you? How are you wired? When do you best function? And honor that, because if you are someone who works best in the morning, but you find yourself staying up too late trying to get stuff done, that's not a good recipe, and that's probably when you're going to wind up burning out. So instead, make sure that you are tackling like maybe either the most time-consuming projects or the things that take the most brain power. Yeah, I guess. Make sure that you're doing those at the time when your body is it's most conducive. Yes, I think that's the word I'm looking for your body. So make sure that you're doing that. Honor yourself, not somebody else's idea of how you're supposed to get stuff done. And then the E in love stands for embrace your divinity. So this is really acknowledging that your body is not separate from your spirit. And when you care for it, that is an act of self-love. And now this is my belief. I believe that we are all spiritual beings living a human existence and that we are all divine. So consider that. And I know some people have that word divinity conjures, specific religious ideas, but if that speaks to you, fine. But if not, just figure out another way to maybe you connect to nature. So embrace your humanness then, and really honor that we're not machines, even though AI is threatening to take us over. Don't let it. I'm reading an interesting book right now, as an aside here, but I don't have the title of it off my hand. Oh, I think it's about, no, I don't want to say it's the new human, but something. Anyway, I'm going to talk about it on a future episode. once I finish it. So I'm not done with it yet. But anyway, all right. Okay. I'm going to honor my body's health and take another sip of water here for a second. Okay. All right. So, what could be your next brave step to take this week? So hopefully you've come to see that really taking care of your physical health is important. To have all parts of your life work more smoothly. So you could start by noticing one physical signal that you've possibly been ignoring. So perhaps ask yourself, where am I tired? What hurts? When do I feel most drained? What am I using to numb instead of nourish? And it could be anything from food, in my case, could be alcohol, maybe it's social media, maybe it's binging on Netflix. You know, if you find yourself spending too much time doing those things, you know, maybe that's something to start paying attention to. And then when you do, choose one health supporting habit to start doing today. Not even this week, but just start doing it today. And again, it's another thing I've talked about in a recent episode where we talked about mindful habits. So it could be something simple like maybe starting to go to bed. You might want to start going to bed 30 minutes earlier, but I've read where it's good to work up to that. So maybe you start by just going to bed 10 minutes earlier, and then 20 minutes, and then 30 minutes. But our bodies don't always like those kind of abrupt changes, because if you suddenly go to bed 30 minutes earlier, your brain is probably still on like, no, I'm still working. This isn't bedtime. So it's important to gradually move into that. Maybe it's starting to go for a walk, and instead not go for a walk for a mile, but start with a 10-minute walk and do that every day for a week. And then the next week you can do 20 minutes and build up. I'm going to be doing that because I'm going to start training soon to do a 10K race and then a half marathon this fall. So I'm going to have to start working up to that. I'm not going to go out and try to do 6 miles when I haven't done that in a very long time. Certainly not running it. It's not going to happen. I have to work up to it gradually, get the muscles used to it. Maybe it is, drink more water like I'm doing, or maybe you've been putting off that physical exam at the doctor's. You might want to consider scheduling that. And pause before doom scrolling. That would be a good thing to do too. And then finally, whatever you decide to do, whatever habit you set up, tie that to your business purpose. So if you decide to go for a walk, for example, you're not just taking the walk for your body, you're taking it so that you can think clearly and speak powerfully and replenish your cup so that you're serving from a full cup again. Now, sometimes the next brave step isn't doing more on your own, though. Sometimes it's letting yourself be held. And if what's been coming up for you today during this episode feels deeper than stress or fatigue, if it feels like grief, I want to gently let you know that registration is closing soon for my upcoming Good Grief Women's Retreat. And because as I mentioned when I was sharing at the beginning of the episode today, if you came in late, you can go back in and watch it or listen to it. Grief affects more than your emotions. it can really impact your energy, your nervous system, your focus, your body, frankly. I mean, I really believe that the back problems I was having, because I hadn't bent any weird way or picked up something overly heavy, it was grief. I was carrying it in my back. So this retreat that we're offering, and it's not just me, I've got a couple other lovely ladies who are joining me. It's a loving, supportive space for women who are ready to honor what they've been carrying and allow healing to begin in a deeper way. So if that speaks to you, I'd love for you to learn more about it. I'll have the link to that in the show notes. And with that, I think what I also want to do today is move us into a light language transmission, because this is something that I like to share on these episodes, and especially because sometimes what grief, stress, or exhaustion need most is not more figuring out, but more receiving. So see, you can get to practice the O and open your heart to receive right now. And light language is one of the healing modalities I'm going to be offering at the Good Grief Retreat too. So this is my invitation to you now to simply breathe, to soften and receive. And what I'm going to do is I'm setting an intention that what you're going to hear today will support you in releasing stress, to reconnect with your body's innate wisdom and open you up to greater vitality, clarity, and aligned success. So if you're listening to this right now where you are driving a car, I would encourage you to pause and come back, because it's better to receive this transmission when you can be just in a nice quiet place. Maybe even put some headphones on so that you're not disturbed, and just allow whatever comes through. I may speak, I may sing. Allow it to speak to your heart, because it's not going to be necessarily anything that your mind is going to be able to translate. Sometimes it's possible, but I'm not promising that. Okay? So I'm presuming that if you were driving, you've taken a break and now you're ready to hear this. So just take a breath, get grounded. And if you want, you can even close your eyes and just allow the message to come through for you today. Ultimately, I ask that whatever comes through is for your soul's highest good and the highest good of all. Anayu kala kaya na kuya, o kuya na kuye. Kuya na koshana le kohua, kanya na ko kuya te. Koshana korepa kuya na, kararion no kuya mono kuye. Ko kayo na Gloria tanare kiranto kriya pashankum. Ko kayo na kuwe, akayo no sana ke. Akroshan no korea bokshin na korea danga. Anna korea no korea posha korea nakaya ta. Asakashin aria konama. Kayoto koma ta koreata. Sana ki kara re. Kuana ki ana koya naka. Kariatan ko shin kare. Karia kunia na kare te. Korea no kuisha no korea ponka. Kalada to koreano ki aba shia do. Koya takana te kala totogrea mono. Kasha no kuye tie ko. Mo ko e kaya no. Goyo no goyo dia, sonna kuya na kuato. Goyo no kuya ti. Kon shanno kuya po kona ki, kalna kui shanna kuya po inka. Ala konin ka deya pa shanna kuwe, kaya no kuya na kuya bano ki. Pashakoto dungare tia, koya toma kaya doko shinga. Alayeta Sannaki Tomatika. I invite you right now to just notice what you feel. See, did anything maybe soften or open up for you, or come into your awareness as well, because your body is not in the way. It might even be showing you a path toward a more loving and sustainable way of living and working. So honor that. Honor that. You know, we've been given these tremendous, tremendous bodies. I mean, if you think about it, and in fact, I was just remembering something. Actually, this is kind of good. I was watching an episode of The Madison the other night, and one of the characters was talking about that she's so glad that breathing is automatic, because the emotions that she was feeling at the time, if it wasn't, she might forget to breathe. And isn't that amazing that our breathing comes automatic? And we can also choose sometimes how we want to breathe. You know, sometimes when you are stressed, you tend to breathe from your chest, and you can, it can get tight. But when you're relaxed, and you can make an effort to breathe from the diaphragm, from, below in your belly, and really take those deep breaths out and then in, it's so much better for you. So when you honor your physical health, you don't just feel better. You also can lead, decide, and serve from a more aligned place. I hope this really spoke to you today, and I really hope it did, and that you're going to take care of yourself, because you know what? There's only one you in this whole amazing world. That's why it's so important to value your uniqueness. You're the only one of you. Even if you have an identical twin, if you're a wonderful person out there who is lucky enough to have that, you and your identical twin are still not identical, because you each have your own thoughts, you each have your own feelings, and that's great. So, yeah, just take care of yourself. And especially if you are a business owner, your clients depend on you, your customers depend on you, your employees depend on you. And if you're not taking care of yourself, and then you get, something happens, then that's going to affect your business. So I want you to be successful in all aspects of your life, so that you can design your life your way, and being healthy is going to help you to do that. So I hope you will join us next week, where I'll be sharing more tips on how to design your life your way. And until then, just remember that your life is asking to be lived more fully. So allow that to happen. Yeah. Namaste.